Hey, Hound Dogs, I'm David Hankins,
I'm Paul Hankins.
I'm Trevor Hankins.
and you're on the air with Power Squared. As part of our look at the 40th anniversary of Transformers, we're lucky to have Marty Isenberg on as a guest. Welcome.
Hello.
For those who don't know who you are, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am a writer, story editor, producer for television animation for 30 plus years. And I've worked on everything from Beetlejuice and Batman and X-Men, the animated series, all the way up to Octonauts and Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy. And in between, I've written for a number of Transformers series, including most notably Transformers Animated, which is probably what you guys want to talk to me about most. And occasionally I can get my words out in the correct order.
Well, trust me, I have that same problem.
When did you discover you wanted to be a writer?
When I discovered that I was not a very good actor. So in college, I was a theater major, and I went to I was in the theater program with people who were much more talented than I was, and a lot more willing to do the hard work of acting. And I realized I probably had a better shot as a writer, so I switched to playwriting, and eventually worked my way out to LA, and kind of stumbled into animation writing completely by accident.
Did you get any of your plays produced?
Not professionally, but I did. I had a play produced on campus, and then when I was in grad school in LA, I had a couple plays produced on campus, and one I guess was semi-professional, was produced, and then I decided I wanted to make money instead of being honest.
Yeah, that's as a motivator.
Are there any writers that inspire or influence your work?
Oh boy. Well, just off the top of my head, I think I was inspired a lot by Paul Dini, who I was fortunate enough to work with as well on Batman and on a couple of Marvel shows. Very inspired by the shows of Joss Whedon, and a lot of J.J. Abrams stuff. I think Transformers Animated was in particular inspired a lot by Lost, and probably by Buffy and Angel, and those kind of shows.
What is a typical day like for you as a writer?
Incredibly boring. Just so uninteresting as to not make very good topic. Well, currently I'm a staff writer on a show, so a typical day might be either working on an outline or a script draft, or participating in a table read, or a story break, and just any part of the process of script writing, anything from just simple, like, two-sentence springboard to full-on script draft, and everything in between.
What is your writing process?
My writing process is kind of instinctive. I mean, it's not necessarily an ABC approach to things. I mean, everything, excuse me, everything in animation production is so divided into steps anyway.
Yeah.
So you start generally, as I was saying, with a springboard, which may be a sentence or two, and then that will get expanded into I guess an official springboard, which would be about a paragraph, and then assuming that's approved, that gets expanded into three paragraph, you would call it a premise or an outline, and then that gets broken down into a beat sheet, which is about 2 pages. Pretty much covers every story beat in the episode. then you do a script draft, and you generally get notes on it. You do revisions. You get more notes on it. You do more revisions. Lather, rinse, repeat until you have a final draft that records. And sometimes you're rewriting lines in the recording booth. Sometimes you're rewriting things as you get the animatic back. Sometimes you're even rewriting things as you get the work print back. As long as you don't have to deal with lip flap or anything. Which was a great thing. Like if you're doing Spider-Man or if you're doing Star-Lord with the mask on, you could rewrite all the dialogue. You could say anything you want, and you get good at just being strategic about. Oh, he has his back to the camera, so there's no lip flap. I can change that line.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a constant rewriting process until the thing actually goes on the air.
From your experience, is there a difference between working on an original IP and an adaptation of an existing one?
Most of my experience is an adaptation of an existing IP. In animation, you really don't get, unless you've actually created the show and the character, which is rarer and rarer these days. You really don't get the opportunity to do original work, and it's been a very long time since I've sat down and written a spec script or any kind of original property. I mean, I've pitched ideas, but I just personally I find it harder to motivate myself to sort of come up with something original because I feel like it's all been done. But if you hand me something and say, what's your take on this existing thing, I find it much easier and much more natural to work with something existing and say, well, I can make that different, or I can make it better, or I like this part of it, but I don't like that part of it. But if we got rid of the bad part and kept the good part, we might have something.
Since you've been a lead writer and a staff writer, is there a difference in the responsibilities between the two?
Oh yeah, I mean, being the head writer or the story editor or the supervising producer, it's much more time consuming and much more responsibility. I mean, when you're in that position, you are responsible for every last piece of writing that is involved in the production process, like I was describing earlier. Whereas if you're a staff writer, it's like, I'm just responsible for my little corner of this universe. So I can relax. So it's actually, I like being a staff writer right now. It's at a point in my career where I'm ready to just kind of slow down and ease my way into retirement.
Do you find it more difficult to write for a younger or an older audience?
Well, I mean, even an older audience for me isn't that much older. I find it's more difficult to write for an older audience, which would be a 6 to 11-year-old audience currently, because there just isn't that much being produced right now. So it's very difficult to find work in that 6 to 11 zone. So the work is really kind of in the preschool zone, anywhere from pre-verbal to about 6 years old, and then they kind of move on to YouTube and video games and TikTok, and so the landscape has changed a lot. In some ways, writing for a younger audience is easier because there's less nuance. It's pretty simple. You really have to pay attention to structure a lot. In writing for preschool, and you don't really have to finesse dialogue too much because it's just about keeping it super clear, and making sure you do things in a way that the younger audience will be able to follow it and understand it. So I know some people have a lot of trouble making that transition, but I haven't found it too terribly difficult.
You say you're writing on a show now. Can you tell us what that show is, or do you have
no, I cannot, because I have signed an NDA and the show has not been announced.
Fair enough.
Just
thought I'd ask. Much as I would love to tell you what I'm working on now, I can tell you the last thing I worked on, which was Octonauts Above and Beyond, which I think the first season is still on Netflix, and the rest of it is on BBC. So if you're in the States, you can't see it, including me.
Dang. From your experience, do you find it more difficult to write episodic or serialized?
You talking about standalone episodic?
Yeah.
It depends. Like if I'm running a show, it does help to kind of have that serialized continuity to to kind of push the momentum forward. So if you're talking about something like Transformers animated, which is very serialized.
Yes.
In certain ways, it was easier to plan out a season than to have to to go individual episode. Each episode is a pitch that you have to sell. Whereas if you have serialized, you're kind of pitching the whole season.
Yeah.
You're working out individual details in the individual episodes. But I think as far as selling it to the executives and selling it to the network, it's a little less stressful to be able to kind of come in and knowing what the season arc is going to be, as opposed to having to pitch 10 to 13 individual stories and get them to sign off on those individual stories.
Noticed that you seem to have a lot of writing credits relating to Hasbro projects. Do you like working with them / do they like working with you?
I haven't really worked with them in a while in any serious way. I think the last major project I did for them was Kaijudo Rise of the Duel Masters, which was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
More than 10 years ago.
Yeah. That's
so if they like working with me, they don't like working with me that much that they're knocking down my doors. Come back.
I'm sure they're lost. I'm sure.
I obviously, it depends on the project. They have all had their ups and downs. A lot of them have been cut short in various ways that I wasn't particularly happy about. But in general, as just like creative partners to work with and individual people, they've been good to work with.
Speaking of Kaijudo, we actually happen to have all of them.
Oh, look at that! What do you got? Those are the DVDs.
Yeah.
We
really liked the show when it aired.
Oh, great! Not a lot of people saw it, so it's nice to hear that they're.
We even have some of the cards. Yeah.
I have a bunch of them. They just gave them to us. I don't know what to do with them. I don't play those games, but they sit on my shelf and they look pretty.
We really liked the show.
Well, that was that I have to credit Andrew Robinson and Henry Gilroy for developing it, and really Andrew in particular for approaching it more like a YA novel than an animated series, and particularly a trading card game based series. I mean, it really kind of was the one and only trading card game series that I can think of that really set out to have a real involved story and meaningful characters, as opposed to people just shouting out a lot of moves and trying to badly recreate the experience of playing the card game in a pseudo story. So I applaud the effort, and it was fun to write on and co-story edit the second season. So they were fun characters to work with.
So we have a few questions about Transformers.
Okay.
Which is why he's here.
If you must.
as you mentioned, you've written for like a handful of Transformers cartoons, and you were a head writer on like Beast Machines and Transformers Animated. How did you become involved in the world of Transformers?
Basically, agent set up a meeting with Hasbro and mainframe executives to talk about what was going to be the follow-up series to Beast Wars. And I was working with my writing partner at the time, Bob Skier, and we seemed to get along with that group, and they liked whatever ideas we had. So they offered us the show, and so we took it.
Were you familiar with Transformers before you got involved?
Not especially. I mean, I was a little old for the original show. I was in college when it came on, and I think I saw an episode or two in passing. And I had friends who had and colleagues who had written on Beast Wars, so I was aware of it. And my 5-year-old nephew was very big into the toys, so I was aware of it through that. But I really didn't sit down and watch Beast Wars until the meeting was scheduled. So I kind of this was those primitive pre-internet, pre-streaming days where you just had to set your VCR to tape it. And watching these episodes that are not being aired in order, so I'm sort of trying to pick out what the overall story is, and getting sort of not even on the internet, but like getting printouts of Usenet groups talking about the lore of Transformers and trying to sift through all of that. So it was eye-opening and very bizarre and confusing to me.
Beast Machines was heavily serialized in an age where that wasn't common for TV animation. How did that approach come about?
Well, Beast Wars was already serialized, so it wasn't too much of a leap. And because we were doing it for Fox, and Fox had kind of pioneered serialized animated storytelling with X-Men, which we've written on as well. So it just seemed like the natural thing to do. There wasn't really any thought, should we or shouldn't we do it? I don't think there was any sense of, oh no, we have to do standalone stories and no continuity. And what was great about Fox is they aired the episodes in order, and I think without a break, if I'm remembering right. So they were very respectful of the storytelling in how they aired it, which is kind of a rarity.
Yeah. What was your favorite part about working on Beast Machines?
What was my favorite part about working on Beast Machines?
If you have one.
The paycheck at the end of it?
It wasn't my favorite experience of working on a show. I think I enjoyed writing some individual episodes and kind of getting a hold on the property. There were a lot of changes that happened, a lot of inconsistencies in what we were being told was needed, and so there was a lot of stop-start. And even when we actually started writing the first couple of episodes, it's like, well, don't we have to explain how they got on the planet? And it's like, no, just start it in the middle of in the middle of the battle, and we'll figure it out later. Okay. So it was kind of that, and my memory is just a lot of yelling at people saying, "What are we doing? Make your minds!"
Sure. What was your favorite part about working on Transformers Animated?
Also a difficult question to answer because it was all favorite. Really the favorite part was the recording sessions. We had such a wonderful cast, and it was just a joy to go to those sessions and work with those voice actors. So that was my favorite part of what was kind of all favorite. So simple answer.
With animated, what was it like working with Derek J. Wyatt?
Derek was a joy. I'd never met Derek before. I mean, I met him through his designs before I met the person. So I was blown away by his designs and looking at his designs, after I'd done quite a bit of verbal, written development on the show. I saw his designs and like, okay, that's the show. That's the tone that it needs to be. But meeting Derek, and I've said this before, he endeared himself to me because he had nice things to say about Beast Machines. Anyone who had nice things to say about Beast Machines, including myself. But yeah, just great guy, full of ideas, and he would always say, "I'm not a writer," but he was a writer. Just in every character he designed had personality, and he may not have been a storyteller per se, but in my view, he was a writer through his art, and I learned a lot about who these characters were by just looking at his designs.
Was the experience any different working on Ben 10 Omniverse?
It was a nice reunion. It was a shame that we didn't, because Matt Youngberg, also the supervising producer from Animated, was the supervising producer on Omniverse. So it was a little disappointing that I didn't get to work with the guys all the time. But it was always fun to work with them. First bunch of episodes I did for them, I was just working with Charlotte and Matt, the story editors, and then some of the later episodes we started actually doing story breaks in the room. So it was fun to be in the room with Matt and Derek again.
Couple questions about the comics.
Okay.
You wrote The Arrival.
Yes. Yes, I did write that.
Were the stories in here based on story ideas that didn't make it into the show, or they invented for the comic?
Some of them were discarded ideas or discarded characters that I had developed particularly for season 1 that just didn't get into season 1. So so I got to pick up a few ideas that I hadn't gotten to do in the show, and some of them were brand new ideas. So it was sort of a mixed bag. I mean, the first issue, it was by IDW's request to retell the origin story. So I didn't want to just do an adaptation of the movie. So I decided, well, what if we just show the things that the scenes you never saw. And there was only one scene that was actually in the original script that had gotten cut. And the rest of it was just sort of imagining, well, what were the Decepticons doing at that point, and what was going on at Cybertron at that point. And so it was just kind of a fun exercise to, and also the other thing is, by that time, we were probably pretty deep into season 2. So there were things we knew that I didn't know when I was writing the original origin movie, so we could incorporate some of that stuff as well.
Just to clarify, are these considered canon?
I consider them canon, yeah.
Sorry.
And I'm the only one who matters. So. No, but I think Matt and Derek considered them canon as well.
What about the Stunticon?
Stunticon job, yeah. Well, that was definitely considered canon by Derek because he was the one who initiated that, and he was doing a lot of the work with BotCon behind the scenes and setting up that collector's set of new characters. So he came to me and said, "Here we have this new set of characters that we want to incorporate into a comic for BotCon," and he had a loose idea of what the story was. So I got together with Derek and with Matt for at least one lunch, maybe a couple lunches. So it was fun. It was a little reunion, and it was kind of like the old days where we're just throwing ideas around and kind of developing the story. And then there was this really funny moment where Matt says, I was just about to say I can't wait for the recording session, but we're not going to record it. So that was a sign that it was kind of like we were able to pick it up just like no time had passed.
No, animated as a show was unfortunately cut short before the planned season 4. Was season 4 as far as it was planned?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
Sorry, did the show get planned as far as season 4 before it was?
Oh yeah, we had a whole arc. We had episodes and episode titles, and a lot of this has shown up in the Allspark Almanac.
Yeah.
And it's shown up on like internet. There's a YouTuber you're probably familiar with named Kean Carlisle who like is obsessive about every last detail about animated. So he's constantly getting his hands on different documents. And yes, there were 2 different versions of season 4 that we pitched. And while we were waiting to what we assumed would be a formality of getting a pickup, just to keep the ball rolling, Hasbro hired me to write the outline for the 3-parter season opener. So just normally I would be paid by Cartoon Network, but that could only happen if there was a green light on production green light. So Hasbro decided to kind of do an end run around Cartoon Network while all these negotiations were happening. And of course, subsequently, I learned that much bigger negotiations were going on as far as Hasbro trying to acquire its own network, none of which we knew at the time. But just to kind of keep the ball rolling, they had me do a 3-part, the outline for the first 3 episodes, the 3-parter Trial of Megatron, which we did a reading for at TF Nation 2019, I think it was.
Yeah, sounds right.
And we were able to get almost the whole voice cast back to do the reading, which was very exciting. And that's available on the YouTube.
Do you think there is a possibility of season 4 materializing in some capacity, or is that more difficult now?
I haven't had any discussions with Hasbro about it in a very, very long time. There was a point where they were kind of dangling it in front of me as like, well, maybe we could do it as comics. Apparently the screen grab comics, the little paperbacks, that they would just do screen grabs from the episodes and do them as comics. Apparently they were selling quite well, and I do recall like going to my kids' like book fairs at my kids' schools years later, like they would still be selling these things. So there was some talk of like, well, if they continue to sell and we burn through all the episodes through season 3, we might start to do originals. But that never came to be. So that was the most concrete thing that was ever offered by Hasbro. But Hasbro has never, I don't think any toy company has ever actually gone back and done like an X-Men 97 or done a reboot of of an original show, because so much of it's tied to product.
Yeah.
And unless suddenly someone decided to do what they've never done before, is let's bring back an entire line of toys that we sold 20 years ago and sell them again exactly as they were, and maybe sprinkle in a few new characters. They've never done that. That's the philosophy has always been, move forward, do something different, new toy line for a new generation and so forth. So I don't imagine that's ever going to change. So unless they have a business model that says, we can actually turn a decent profit just by selling to the fans, and that maybe we can, we can promote this product for the fans with a little bit of fiction in the form, they probably wouldn't commit to a full-on animated series, but I don't think it would be that much of an investment to do it as a comic. But again, they've never pulled the trigger on it. IDW has never pulled the trigger on it. I have no idea who has the comic rights to Transformers currently.
I think Skybound has Transformers
Skybound.
comics now.
Yeah, nobody's contacted me, and I have not been proactive about saying, hey, let's do an animated comic.
So you hit the...
And I want to say, if somebody else wants to be proactive about it and hire me, I'd 100% do it. But I just don't have it in me to knock on doors or do the Greg Weisman thing where it's like, let's get the fans all involved and we'll get another season of Young Justice. And,
right.
I just don't have the energy to put into that.
So you mentioned the point of Transformers, of course, was to sell toys.
Yes, that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody.
Do you have a collection of them yourself?
I have some, yeah. What was nice about Transformers, about animated, which was not true about Beast Machines, is they actually gave us toys. So the only Beast Machines toy I have is a Black Arachnia that Derek gave me. Otherwise, I don't own any of those toys. But I have a pretty decent collection. There's a few that I have missing. There's a few that are still in the box. Most of them I've taken out of the box. I do have the BotCon Stunticon job set and those additional characters that they made for BotCon. I think I'm missing. I don't have a Lugnut. I don't have a Blitzwing. I think I have pretty much everybody else. I'd have to think about it. But there's always people are always like at conventions. I'm signing toys. It's like, oh, I never got this one.
What about the ones that were only released in the Japanese toy line?
No, I don't have any of those.
All right. I have a few nerdy questions about animated. Do combiners exist in the animated universe?
Combiners like Devastator?
Yeah, something like that.
They were supposed to. The original plan for season 4 was that the big climax. I take it back. This was for season 3. We had planned that the big climax was going to be Omega Supreme versus Devastator. And there was an episode 3's a Crowd where Bulkhead kind of gets, stuck to the Constructicons and Dirt Boss. And the original idea was that was going to be sort of a mini Devastator with Bulkhead as a reluctant component of that. And Hasbro just decided, it's too expensive to make these things. We're not going to make Devastator. So if we're not selling the product, then it's not going to be on the show. So we had to scramble for because we kind of shot our wad with the Starscream taking over Omega Supreme in Transwarped in the 3-parter. So it's like, well, now what do? We were thinking we were going to go to Devastator. It's like, I don't know. I guess we do 3 Omega Supremes. Okay, I guess we'll do that. So I was kind of disappointed that that's where we ended up. But that was always the plan. And then just at this last TF Con, the former lead toy designer from Hasbro for animated, Eric Siebenaler, actually did some designs and sketches with the help of and Josh Perez also, of what those characters, those Constructicon characters, would have looked like. And I think they even did a concept of what Devastator would look like. So do they exist? No. Could they have existed? Yes.
One notable thing about animated is how it like represents like all these different corners of the franchise. So I'm wondering if the show was made now, would it have done the same with any of the versions of Transformers that came after?
Probably. I mean, the reason there were so many nods to, so many characters across so many iterations was because of Derek. He would just, if we needed a crowd scene, he'd just throw them in there. Because Derek was a full-time fan of all iterations, so he did like to put little nods in there to everything. Whereas I think my knowledge was largely limited to Beast Wars and Beast Machines. I really didn't. I mean, I watched a few episodes of the original G1 just to sort of prepare for, well, how did they originally introduce the Transformers? Because we were taking the attitude that let's introduce these characters as if they never existed before. Even though, ironically, the first thing we did was show a clip from the old show. Still, just philosophically, it's like, let's pretend there never was a Transformers. And so one of the first things they did is, well, what did they do when there never was a Transformers before? How did they introduce that concept? So my familiarity was Beast Wars and Beast Machines, and a little bit of G1. I think Matt's familiarity was almost entirely G1, but Derek knew everything and loved everything, so he would always sprinkle in stuff that he liked.
I don't know if you've seen what Transformers they've been doing toy line called Legacy, where it's like it's new versions of characters from existing Transformers properties to celebrate like the 40th anniversary. And,
I've seen a few of those figures, or I've seen images of those figures, and some of them are pretty good. Some of them, I think, they didn't quite nail it.
There's actually a few from have you seen the ones were animated?
Yeah, those are the ones I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So I thought, like, my recollection is they got the face right on Bumblebee. He's got the smirk. Prowl and Optimus, they didn't quite. Yeah, there he is. The body isn't. It's not quite as curvy and animated.
Yeah.
As animated was. I think one of just the miracles of that toy line was how much they were able to capture and engineer the look of those very, certainly for Transformers, very squashy and stretchy designs, and yet those toys. I'm looking up at my shelf as I say this.
Right.
Those toys really did capture that in a way that they really haven't been able to do, or haven't chosen to do before or since.
Also have Prowl and Optimus.
Yeah, Optimus looks a little closer, but again, facially, I think it kind of lacks that personality that Derek put into those designs. And that was something I really made a point of in a very early meeting with all the Hasbro executives. Is, we were kind of having our launch meeting, and all the designs were up around this big conference table. And I think I was supposed to go into my pitch of what the story is going to be. And I said, before I do that, I just want to ask everybody to take a minute to look at these designs and look at those faces and look at that expression. This is something we've never, ever been able to achieve on Transformers. And that is going to make the difference in this show.
Moving away from animated, I noticed that you've at least half the episodes you've written for Transformers Prime involve finding some sort of ancient relic. I was wondering if that was a coincidence.
Well, I think all the episodes I wrote were for season 2, and that was kind of the arc of season 2, as I recall. So it's not like I said, "Hey, let's do another relic story." No, we're doing this episode in which we find this relic, and so the experience on Prime was the story was handed to me in quite a lot of detail. So in terms of the concept of the story, I really didn't contribute much other than follow directions. And I most of those episodes I don't think I've even seen. So I think I did one draft on each of those scripts, and then the story editors took it over. So I don't remember a lot.
Right.
About what I
Fair enough. If given the chance, would you work with Transformers again?
Yeah, I think I would. Yeah, if I'm offered. I mean, currently I'm under contract on another show, so I couldn't necessarily do it like right now. But if someone were to come to me and say, "We need you to develop the next iteration or story edit the current iteration," I would at least consider it. I mean, I'm kind of at a point where I'm winding down on work, so it would have to be a really good offer and a really really good property for me to commit to doing like a full-time show running thing. Yeah, I've enjoyed working on. Nothing has been as great as animated, but I have enjoyed working on various other iterations of the property, and I feel like I know enough that I'm not jumping in cold like I did when I did Beast Machines.
Do you have a favorite Transformers character?
Just of the franchise, independent of the animated version, no. I mean, I just don't really have that kind of relationship with the franchise. I mean, I have a number of favorites that we did for animated. I think the one that sticks with me the most is probably Sentinel Prime, just because it's so much fun to write such a jerk. And still have him be an Autobot and technically a good guy. So that was just something that they hadn't really done before, is have that kind of internal conflict within the Autobots. So that was fun to introduce. And I loved writing Wreck-Gar just because he was so silly.
So you were also a head writer for G.I. Joe Renegades.
Yep, co-head writer with Henry Gilroy.
We're fans of that show as well.
Oh, hooray! Yeah.
What did you find different about working for G.I. Joe versus Transformers?
Well, there's clearly a fan base, but not as big or active a fan base. It was great working with Henry because he had a lot more familiarity with the original than I did. So I always took the approach of, like I did on animated, whereas we're developing stories, where I'd say, we need a character who is like this. Who can that be? And usually it would be Henry who would say, oh, well, why don't we make it this character? Like, great, sold. He did, one of the first things he did was he got me the guidebook to all the G.I. Joe characters. So that was very helpful. But again, it was fun to reimagine something that was so much a product of its time.
Yeah.
Just the way that the original Transformers was so much a product of its time, and to really kind of subvert the the original version of it and tell a version of it that felt, at least to us, more relevant for the time that we were writing it.
Is there anything you wish you could have done with Renegades?
Yeah, had a second season.
Do you remember any plans for the second season?
Oh yeah, it was a similar thing to animated season 4, where the only difference is we were actually greenlit for a second season on Renegades, and then they changed their minds. So that was kind of bitter pill to swallow. But for season 2, we got as far. We definitely wrote the first 3 outlines, and I wrote the first draft of the first script. So those exist. And then we were, because even after they said, oh, you're not going to do the series, somehow they worked out. It's like, well, maybe we'll do a movie, we'll do a special or something. So there was budget for us to write those first 3 scripts. And then in the middle of doing that, they said, no, we're not going to do it. And I think they paid us off. And I think I was the only one who had gotten as far as actually writing the script draft. But if there isn't quite the same demand for Renegades as there is for animated, but if there ever is, I mean, I'd be happy to do some kind of reading with those as well. Because we had big plans. We had stuff we wanted to do.
Well, I thought it was interesting how, even though the final episode opened the door for that season 2, it still felt conclusive in a way.
Yeah, well,
So
I argued that once we got the axe, that I said, let's cut the scene where you see Cobra Commander's alive.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, if we're dead, he's dead. But no, they insisted that we show that he survived, even though there would be no season 2 for him to survive for.
Also, we've seen it said that Renegades took some influence from the A-Team. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah, shamelessly. In fact, Jeff Klein, our producer, because originally I think Henry and I took separate meetings to discuss our take, like what we would do with G.I. Joe, because it's a tough property to do. At the time, it was a very tough property to do, because it's real people with guns, and even though they're like laser guns and things, and very military, and it's like, networks and things just didn't want to touch it. It was a lot easier in the original run, because it was first run syndication, and Hasbro could just pay for it, and it's like, here, just air this thing, we're going to sell toys with it. So they were looking for takes, and I had a take, and Henry had a take, which was different, and then we were hired to do it together. And then Jeff Klein said, okay, here's what we're doing. And we're doing the A-Team, and I talked to the producer, who's a friend of his, who said, we're ripping off your show. And he said, oh, fine. At least that's what he told us. So it's like, okay, A-Team, that sounds fun. So what was nice about it was we were doing A-Team, but we also incorporated some of Henry's take, and we also incorporated some of my takes. So it felt like we were still kind of getting to do what we had pitched initially in that A-team framework.
From working on Renegades, did you have after that? Did you have a favorite GI Joe character?
Tunnel Rat, 100%. we loved, and from the get-go, it's like Tunnel Rat's gonna be our guy, and we had fun writing him. And then Matt King, the voice actor, just totally embraced him and was terrific. And it was a hard role to cast for some reason. I mean, said we want an Asian Steve Buscemi. That's what we want. And every audition was like doing the sort of Brooklyn thing. And Matt King was the only one who nailed it, and he was great. Yeah. So shout out to Matt.
Tunnel Rat was great. So looking at your writing credits, we also noticed you had a credit on I guess moving away from Hasbro, you had a writing credit on Atlantis: Milo's Return.
Yes, that is a writing credit for something I did no actual writing on. We're discussing all the series where we got cut off at the knees. So Atlantis was greenlit for, I think it was 39 episodes. And I was brought on to story edit 10 of them, and we got really far in the production. We had done voice records for, I think, maybe more than half of them. 3 episodes had gotten shipped overseas, and we're already starting animation. And then the movie came out, and was a disappointment as far as box office. And then there were, I think, 3 or 4 different possible places within the Disney networks that it could have aired. So it was Disney Channel, there was what was called Toon Disney at the time, there was ABC, and there was syndication. And none of them would take the show. Mm-hmm. So Disney said, all right, we're canceling it. But there were these 3 episodes that I had nothing to do with that were already in production. They say, okay, we'll do a direct to DVD sequel, and we'll write some things to sort of tie those 3 episodes together. And I think originally the thought was, if I'm remembering right, the thought was we were going to write an original direct to DVD sequel, and they said, nah, just take what we have and string it together. So by that point, because I was the last story editor in, I was the first one out. So I was the other 2 plus Tad Stones, the exec producer, were still under contract. So they did the actual writing of the scenes that tied it all together. I didn't have anything to do with it, but Tad very generously put my name on the credits. So thank you, Tad.
Some general questions. If you were to go back and relive your writing career, is there anything you would have done differently?
I probably, but I don't know how. There was no great plan or design. It's sort of like the late Dean Stefan, who's another animation writer that I worked with a lot, used to say, well, it's kind of like surfing. You catch this wave and you ride it as long as you can, and then eventually the wave crashes, and then you're sort of floundering the water for a while, and then another wave comes along and you catch it and you ride it. So I think if I had to live it all over again, I would probably end up catching different waves, just because that's the nature of things. But it was there was no real plan.
Is there any work that you've done you wish more people were aware of?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I wish more people had seen Renegades, because I think I think we did a good job on that. I wish more people had seen Kaijudo. I wish more people had seen Guardians of the Galaxy, the animated series, because I think we did really good work on that as well. So yeah, there's all kinds of there, and there's stuff that I'm probably glad that people have not.
Is there any advice you'd give to someone who wanted to get into animation writing?
I don't have advice, because the only advice I could give is how to get into the animation business in the 90s, because that's when I did it. It is so different now that I couldn't tell you how to get started anymore.
Fair enough.
The general advice is just keep writing, and the more you write, the better you'll get at it.
Yeah.
Even if you're not selling anything. But yeah, as far as how to make inroads in this business, I can barely figure out how to do it myself with 30 plus years experience. And people reach out to me, and it's just the sad truth is I don't know how to do it
anymore. Do you have any personal projects of your own?
I don't. I mean, not in writing or animation. I mean, I have there's a group of animation writers that are sort of a loose band that we get together and play music, and in fact we're getting together tomorrow night. So that's a project in a sense. It has no real end goal other than for a bunch of guys to get together and play music. But, it's a lot of fun.
Is there something you can tell us about you that most people don't know?
Probably, but I don't know that I will.
We ask all our guests if you've actually we do a comic book called Power Squared, which is why this is on the air with Power Squared.
I see.
Have you all heard of us or seen it or read it or anything?
Other than the business card that you handed to me. Well, you didn't hand it to me because you weren't there. At this last TFCon, no, I have not heard of it.
Okay. If we sent you some, would you read it?
Yeah, if you want, sure.
Oh. All right.
If people wanted to follow you, what's the best way?
Spot me in the street and keep your distance. Yeah, I'm not big in the social media. I don't have like a Facebook profile that's for fans. My Facebook is for people I actually know, for friends and family.
Right.
If you want to reach out to me through LinkedIn, and even if you want to messenger me through Facebook, I'll pretty much respond to anything if you have a question or a specific thing you want to ask me. I won't necessarily friend you or link to you on LinkedIn, but I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Yeah.
All right. So if you are watching this on YouTube later and you like this, leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more, and leave a comment below if you have any thoughts about any of the projects Marty Isenberg has worked on.
All right. So, thank you again, Marty, for being on the show. We really appreciate it. It's really important to have you here. We're going to spend the month of May talking about Transformers. We do appreciate your time to be on the show. So until next time, I'm David Hankins.
I'm Paul Hankins. I'm Trevor Hankins.
And you've been on the air with Power Squared.